Hi everybody, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the final project for the course and some of the resources I've linked to, and I may add additional resources. I'll show you where those are going to be. So let me take you over there. The final project materials are here in the content area of the course where you would expect them to be. What I've done is I've created a submodule within course resources. And so there you go. This is, you click on here and these are the files that will open up. Notice I put the due date here. Our last day of class is the 30th of July, which is amazing. We're only about a month away. It's gone pretty fast. But I've given you the due date for the final project the day before. What they did, for some reason in the spring semester this semester, the last day of class was also the last day, the first day they wanted grades in, or they wanted grades in the last day of class. They're not going to get them. But just in case this happens again, I'm asking for your project due the day before the last day of class, because that'll give me a chance to get those graded and assessed. So here's what I'm asking you to prepare, and I'll walk you through the directions themselves, and I'll show you some of the resources I've shared for you. What I want you to do with this final project is to get a taste of what literary criticism is all about. We've already touched on a few of the theoretical schools of literary criticism. I had you looking at the Marxist and the feminist school when we read the narrative by Frederick Douglass, and I do intend to have you look at one or two more schools in our upcoming weekly discussions if I can work them in, if they seem appropriate to the works that we're looking at. So you get some more exposure. What I want you to do is get a flavor for literary criticism, and you're going to do this by kind of sort of a two-pronged approach. One of the key things I want you to do is go out and find a journal article from a peer-reviewed journal on one of the works that we have read in this course. Okay, so I've got the process here. That journal article you will read, analyze, understand. In your paper, you're going to summarize it briefly, hitting the main ideas, and then you are going to discuss it in terms of what school of literary theory you think is being applied in that article, and you'll use that Purdue OWL resource on literary theory that we used during the week we covered Frederick Douglass, I think about 2 weeks ago. And so I've linked to that for you again. So stage one, let's walk through these with you. Stage one, you're going to choose one of the works we've read, ideally something you've enjoyed or something you've understood, something that's been easier for you that you feel pretty comfortable with, because you're going to want to be, it's very important that when you read what a critic says about a work, you know enough about the work to filter what he or she is saying. In other words, to see if they've read it correctly, if they've read it differently from you, if they're approaching the work in a way that you agree with. And you will find you disagree with critics sometimes, and critics aren't always right about everything, and they debate things amongst themselves. So you just want to make sure you've got a work you're comfortable with. One of the things that you will have trouble doing will be the very long works of which we only have a chapter or two. So for example, kind of unfortunately, the Journey to the West probably won't work for this assignment, because we read only a very little bit of it. The Vindication of the Rights of Women probably won't work, because we read just a very little bit of it, unless you're willing to dig in and read more of those works. Then you'll be going out to find a peer-reviewed journal article. Peer-reviewed means it's a journal article published in a journal which is in which the works are read, reviewed, edited, evaluated by other people in the profession. Okay, and you've been exposed to these probably in 111. More than likely, you've been exposed to them, if not there, in high school classes, especially if you've taken AP classes or anything like that. If you have any difficulty identifying a journal article, then run what you find by me. All right. I would use the Delta databases. I'm going to show you a link to them and a link to the tutorials, or where you can find the tutorials on those. The reason is journal articles are very rarely available for free. So if you do a search on Google for a journal article, you might find it on JSTOR, you might find it on some other database, but they're going to ask you to subscribe to download that journal article. These have very small circulation. The journals tend to be purchased only by libraries. Very few people actually own these journals in which these things are published, or people might subscribe to one or two. They're not magazines, and they're published in volumes that are actually like books if you go to the actual bookshelf in the library to find them. And so you will very rarely find these on for free, sorry, on Google. So use our databases. You have access to all these resources for which Delta already pays the subscription. The one to begin with is JSTOR, which it links out to a lot of journals specifically. If you don't find anything there on that strikes your fancy, InfoTrack and EBSCO also link out to journals. And if you're still stuck, I would highly recommend contacting one of the reference librarians at the Delta College Library. That's a useful resource no matter what sort of research project you're doing, but they can help you track down a journal article, and there may even be a hard copy there, or they might be able to find you something by interlibrary loan. Now, there's a chance you're going to need to use interlibrary loan. This does mean you want to get on this right away. At least find the work, choose the work, and find the article as soon as possible. Okay, stage 3, once you've got a good understanding of that article, I want you to look at that Purdue OWL page. It's linked to, again, in this subfolder. And I want you to try to identify the critical approach that's used in that article. In other words, is it a feminist article? Is it a feminist article? Is it a Marxist article? Is it employing psychoanalytical approaches? Is it new criticism? And you may have to do some additional research on the literary school, and because we've not studied these in depth, you don't have to be an expert on it, but I want you to choose a school that makes sense to you. Always ask me if you've got questions. I can provide additional resources if you are very interested in a school that you just don't quite have enough information on. This is really just a chance to get your kind of toes in the pool. So I'm not too worried that whether you understand everything in that school completely perfectly, but the questions that they provide on that Purdue site are very useful ways of getting your head around what that school tends to look at. Okay, then finally, you're going to be writing an essay, which I'm going to give you the structure for the essay, which introduces that journal article, discusses the school of literature, explains what literary theory it seems to be employing and why, and then you will agree or disagree with the positions taken by that writer. You can organize this in different ways, but it needs to be a very cleanly organized essay. So I strongly suggest this going with this organization. Part 1 of the essay, introduce the journal article, introduce the subject, and kind of your thesis, which is here's the school of thought it's following, and I agree or I disagree or I find that whatever you decide you want to say about this article in the end. This introduction you'll probably write last, because you're going to have summarized the article, you're going to have looked at the critical approach, and you're going to have responded to the article in order to introduce what you had to say in all those sections. Okay, so structurally this will be first. Writing wise, you'll probably do the introduction at the very end. The first thing you'll want to do is write a summary of the article, hitting the main ideas, bringing in quotes to highlight important ideas, or really key concepts that author's introduced. As you summarize, it doesn't hurt to have, or at least as you edit your summary later on, have that critical approach in mind so you can emphasize the parts of the article that you're going to use to make that connection. So you may find your summary, if what you want to talk about is a Marxist approach, your summary may highlight the parts of the article that indicate that it is taking a Marxist approach to that work of literature. The third part will identify the critical approach, and again you'll describe the critical approach from that Purdue site or any other resources you find, and then you'll apply it to the article. Here is where he's talking about class, or here is where he's talking about, or she's talking about the subconscious of the character, or here's where the feminist theory is being, or the lens is being applied to the story. Okay, so for all of these, you're going to be bringing details out of the article and details out of the work that you've decided to talk about. And then finally, your take on it, agree or disagree with the article. One thing you'll need to do either way is find additional evidence from the work to support your agreement or to support a disagreement. So throughout this paper, and it's got to be about 3 to 4 pages, it may go a bit over, that might be on the concise side for it. but minimum 3 pages. And that's a bare minimum, I think, to do this well. Throughout your essay, you'll be quoting and paraphrasing from the article and from the work of literature the article's about. So this is a final thing I'll say, very important, then I'll show you the resources quickly and let you go. We are using the MLA style guide for this essay. I've linked to some resources on that at the RIT Center. I'll show you where those are. But it is kind of presumed you are familiar with that. I don't actually teach MLA in here. If you have questions, feel free to ask. So the essay format has to look a certain way. And really, 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 really importantly, you need to include the parenthetical citations in the text in the right places and then the works cited page at the end. And I can't emphasize that enough. Sometimes I'll get a works cited page but no parenthetical citations, and people will think that they've applied the MLA stylistic guide or the MLA citation format. The parenthetical citations are the most important thing because they show to me that you are acknowledging what words in the essay itself aren't yours. Okay? If you don't have those, that's where the plagiarism sets in. You can cite the sources at the end, but if I don't know if this sentence is yours or a source's, that's plagiarism. If I don't know if this idea is yours or a source's, that's plagiarism. So make sure you've got both. Okay, let me quickly back up here and again read this printed out. Ask me if you have any questions. I've developed it for this class for the first time, so it's brand spanking new, just off the presses, so I may need to clarify things for you. Okay, so the links. Link to the library databases in the Delta College library. Okay, journals and magazines. What I wanted to point out here, I'm just making sure that what it is within the range of my, yeah, that'll work. Here, EBSCO, InfoTrack, and then if you scroll down a bit more, ERIC is another good resource. JSTOR at the bottom here. Off-campus link, is going to require your username and password, and that's the one you'll take unless you happen to be doing this on campus. There is a tutorial on how to use these databases linked to the database. Watch that because it will help you determine search strings. Okay, in other words, the terms you want to use. If you're running dry, this is where you call the reference librarian because, and you can use this contact us in the margin, and you can contact any of the reference librarians, and they will help you track down a resource that you can't find. Don't start with them because they don't know what you want to write about, and you may not yet until you start looking, but take advantage of their expertise. These are people who studied research professionally. Okay, let me come back here to the resources, and we're almost done. This is the OWL page on literary theory. We've looked at that before. And this is the RIT Center Virtual Handbook. And of course, the RIT Center is the Writing Center here at Delta College. It's in the back of the library. They are a terrific resource to bring a draft to, and they have an online draft evaluation service. If you've got concerns about how things are going, but you can scroll down. There are all sorts of great resources here. What I am pointing out to you here are the citation style resources here. Okay, so an overview to the 2009 update. Don't worry about that too much. Here is the MLA style guide from, again, Purdue's Online Writing Lab. Another place to look for, and I'm going to actually, I think I will add this link for you because it's also very useful. If you come back to the library and here, and find they have a handouts folder, which is going to be kind of just outside the range of the bit I'm capturing here, but they have a handouts folder. The MLA style of handouts from here, I'm sorry, the handout for MLA electronic resources, sorry, I'll link to this to you for you directly. This is extremely useful because it will show you how to cite the article that you found on one of our databases. So you've searched in the EBSCO database, you found this journal article, you need to include this language at the end to indicate that you found it in that database. And I'm going to, as soon as I end this video, I will add this link to the bottom of that final project resources module. So this is it. This is your final project. Again, use the help forum if you've got questions about how this works. Email me directly if you're struggling with topics, struggling with finding an article, just not sure what you want to do, or if you're just excited about your project and you want to ask for ideas or share ideas with me as you're writing. Feel free. If you want to meet me, we can meet on campus. If you want to Skype with me, we can Skype. If you want to call me, I'll take your number. I'll give you a call back, or give you my Gmail number. Whatever works best. We can talk about your project. So really get going on it. Number one thing, start it now and start planning time for it. You can't do it all now because you're busy with your group project. You've got a lot of reading going on, but start it and start mapping out the work. If you delay this to the last week, it's a lot to handle in 1 week, and it's a good part of the grade, so you want to get it right. Okay, I'm going to add this as a resource, and then I will let you get back to working on the reading that's due this week and all of that, and also getting started thinking about this final project.